All right, hello everyone. My name is Disc, and in this video we have a level 12 Necrotic Wake coming to us from Medify. This is a viewer lesson, and we've already had an hour to speak ahead of time and even a quick little follow-up lesson before the recording of this video. So we're trying to see how well the application of these ideas is in practice. But looking at his damage overall here, so one of the two main corrections we already had was you're not prioritizing your torment spells. He was dropping a Shadow Word Death, so that's something we're going to look for. And then the other main correction is he was misusing Radiance. He was overusing it, and I think that's a trap a lot of priests can fall into. Radiance is a very powerful spell and has a place in our gameplay, but so do our single atonements. So the correction at first was too many single atonements, not enough Radiance. But now we might have gone a little bit too far, so we're going to pay close attention to that. But looking at the Dark Reprimand here, pretty easily, I think this should be above your Void Blast. So let's kind of pay attention to how many of your penance you're getting empowered. And yeah, and then looking at the first two here, this is where we're going to see a lot of loss. So our Void Wraith is our most important spell. It's the strongest spell we have. It should not be this far behind your Rift. So what this shows me here is that you're missing some torments. I do believe when I watched this through already, you're getting your 2-to-1 ratio pretty good. So 2 rifts per every 1 wraith on average. That is what we want. But the wraith trailing so far behind, I think you're missing torments here. And the encouragement before recording this video was to aim for a baseline of at least 5 torments. And I think we're getting that pretty consistently. But we kind of need to know in the back of our mind that even though we're getting 5, you know, the battle's not over yet because we have to actually aim for 8. So 5 is a great place to start if you're just getting into discipline and like learning what the torments are. But we need to be aiming for 8. So kind of keep that in mind when it comes to our rotation. I think even some of yours must be hitting below 5, which is why this is so far behind. But in this video, let's do a quick scan of buffs too. I like doing this. Not buffs, but cooldown usage. So I think you had pretty good usage, but let's kind of like see what your buttons do here. So I'm looking at, mainly I'm looking at your major cooldowns like Barrier, Paints Up, Rapture. Okay, it looks like your defensives are being played, your personal defensives. There's 1 Paints Up, 1 Rapture, another Paints Up, 1 Barrier, another Barrier, another Rapture, another Paints Up. Okay. So you're getting those, you are getting those, so I feel like you do understand the time and place for them, but on average, it looks like you could be getting more. So just food for thought, you probably know this already, but Paints Up's cooldown is affected by shields. So if you ever have 1 of 2 or 0 of 2, perfect time for a Rapture. That eats off about 30 seconds of the cooldown. But it actually looks like you're getting good play of spells. I did not do that ahead of time, but I have watched this ahead of time, and I think we have a lot of things going right here. Mainly, you have my 2 of my key UI elements, and that's our nameplates, enemy health, and my grid 2, that's friendly health. So I think at least having those 2 major elements, that puts you in a really good seat here. I do stand by those UI pieces, and they are great for discipline in Mythic Plus. But the thing I want to focus most on here is your rotation. So instead of focusing too much on UI elements, I might call out a couple, is your rotation. And we've already talked about this in Discord, but I wanted to kind of drive it home in this video. So as a standard rotation, this is including the pet and the rift. From start to finish, what it looks like, let's say we're approaching a pull, we're not in combat yet, you already want to have the group atoned. You don't really want to go into a group dry, which is I think what you're doing almost every pull. And the reason we want atonements already out is because as soon as pull begins, we have to start dotting. And so a lot of times on pull start, I'll try and highlight this, you're almost not doing anything. I don't see you atoning, I don't see you dotting. So the idea in a perfect scenario is we already have atonements in group. As soon as combat initiates, we dot. So at least 2, I would say, letting our penance do the rest. But then, so assuming that we have long atonements in party, that's with our single atonements, that allows us to go into our torment rotation freely without having to worry about atoning. So I think what I'd like to see more from you is to play your torments before any sort of deviation. So Pet, Rift, Penance, Death, or Pet, Death, Rift, Penance. One way or another, I want those 4 spells played before you start Smiting or Radiance. And what I see a lot of times is you play your Pet, you play your Rift, and you're now playing other spells with torments available. So the problem we run into, and we do see it in here, the idea is we get 2 torments from Penance, 2 torments from Death. Unless you put those on cooldown ASAP, you won't be able to get their subsequent cast. And that's what happens. So like, for example, you go into your Pet window, you're hitting other things, and 3 or 4 spells later, you hit your Penance, and now you've just, you've forfeited the opportunity to get that second Penance because you didn't play it soon enough. And yeah, the way it works out, we get 2 torments from Penance, 2 torments from Death, and the only way that's going to happen is if we play those on cooldown, put those on cooldown ASAP. So we really don't want to deviate from getting those on cooldown with, you know, a Radiance that's too early, playing Smites in between. We want to do those long atonements, which allows us to go Pet, Rift, Penance, Death without having to atone. And, you know, I think I showed you a graphic in Discord, but yeah, so a lot of times you're playing your Radiance way early in your rotation. And I guess I'll flash it here on screen too, but notice my preferred Radiance is actually after the Torments and after the 3 blasts for the extension. So you're just playing it a little too early. You're relying a little too much on Radiance. My approach to Healing Discipline is it's a mix of both. So on open, we use long atonements. In the middle of our Rift, we use Radiance. And I would say starting out, at least where we are now, any time the Rift is out, I want to see you Radiance. And there's a lot of times where the Rift is out and I see you flash healing. We just don't want to do that, mainly because we want those extra bolts from the Penance. And that was an area when we looked at your damage spread, your Dark Reprimand was hitting a little bit low. And it's because in your Rift window, you're kind of, you know, playing other atonement spells other than Radiance. But let's go ahead. Okay, yeah, here's the talents. I did want to stop here really quick. There's really only one thing I would recommend. So this is a very, how do I say it? We have less spells in this build, which is totally fine. I think it's a totally valid approach. So we're not using VE, we're not using Star, we're not using Life, and we are opting into range. So one thing to think about with this talent, it is good if you're playing that strategy. So I think mainly the point of this is to allow you to outrange attacks from enemies. And you're not doing that in here. So food for thought, unless you're going to play into that gameplay, you probably would be better putting that somewhere else. Also food for thought, this dungeon doesn't take Mass Dispel. So this is a wasted point. You could put that anywhere else. And then this is the only point I really think is flat out objectively wrong. So you don't want your fear to take longer to break, especially not in PvE. So when we fear a pack, it's acting as an interrupt, and we're actually counting on the fear to break instant. So I would put this actually into Dominate Mind. Then also food for thought, this is a dungeon where you could be practicing Dominate Mind. So this is not good. This would be better, at least something you could practice. I mean, if you don't want to put it in there, if you're not there yet, put it into Tithe Evasion. You can also take Purge to help on Narzuda, things like that. But on the discipline side, the only suggestion you might want, you could try taking Painful Punishment into Malicious Intent. I think that's better, and that's a hill I'll die on.
Now you learn the true lesson of the void.
So again, what I would like to see is long atonements, Pet, Death, Rift, Penance, Blast, 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 then Radiance. And what we're going to see in a lot of these opening polls is you go Pet, Mind Blast, Radiance, Penance, Death. So you're, yeah, let's just watch this. And I think the point I wanted to make, so I'm watching your torments here. You do get 5, which is the instruction. But again, you have to remember, oh, you actually got 6. Oh, you got 7, so that's really good. The thing you want to think about is if you divert from playing your torment spells and putting them on cooldown, is going to hurt your chances of getting those additional torments. So it's food for thought. And then also food for thought, consider taking my Omni CD. I don't think you're tracking the right spells. And for example, in this dungeon, you're primarily giving PI to the Ret Paladin. You should be tracking his Wake of Ashes, which you're not. So I think you're tracking his personal defense. I don't see a point in doing that. And then whatever this spell is, I'm not sure. But more importantly, just for example, you should be tracking Wake of Ashes and Sack, potentially, if you want to track 2 spells. Okay, so let's watch your rotation here with your pet. Okay, 2 dots. Okay, I'm just going to pause real quick. So I know I already said this in the beginning of the video, I think, and to you in Discord. You never want to send your pet out with no atonements. That's putting you in this position where you're having to Radiance instead of hitting your Torment spells. And I think it's kind of bridging that gap of understanding your attacks are your heals and your best heals. So we want to, now that the pet's out, we want to prioritize these. And what happens... Okay, so you played Pet, here's the Mind Blast, Penance, and then now you're casting a Radiance with a Death available. So more importantly, I would favor the Torment spell. We should have already had Long Atonements in party. And then in the middle of the window, after this third Void Blast, after this is where I'd play the Radiance. Yeah, and so let me just back that up a couple of frames here. So when we were looking at your Dark Reprimand output and how it was a little bit low, the idea is, so we're getting 2 torments from Penance. Okay, here's the first Dark Reprimand. It's not empowered. So one thing I like doing in between combat even is I'll Radiance in between combat to go ahead and bank a proc for this Penance. Have Long Atonements in party. And then now the idea here is... Okay, and then your second Penance was empowered. So it's not the weakest rift, but it's also not the strongest rift. So I think you had, what was that, 10 bolts empowering the rift? It could have pretty easily been 12, and that would have been additional output. And also right here, it was a little bit sus of a play. I think you're actually good at it, but let's just kind of make a point of this. I'm watching your Mind Blast. Okay, and then in this frame, Mind Blast is back. Watch how long this pull lasts and you sit on it. So what I would have liked to have seen is that 2-for-1 ratio. Send 1 more blast here, because this pull is lasting long enough to get a little more value. Okay, so now that we're in between combat, the perfect ideal would be Atone. Also pre-bank your Harsh Discipline, casting a Radiance. Yeah, so I would call it like starting a pull dry. So 2 atonements is not enough. I would say at least 3 going into a pull. I'd feel a lot better with 4 or 5 going into a pull, because your first job is to dot. So let's see how many dots you get. Okay, you get 2 dots, that's fine. Yeah, and here we have it again. So your pet is out. You have torment spells, and you're having to Radiance because you did not do your ramp with atonements. So this Radiance is very out of place. You don't want it this early before your torments. You definitely want it either before the pull or further back in your rift window. And on that one, let me just replay that a little bit too. And I think maybe you're just getting warmed up here. Oh wait, that was too far. But you have these torment spells, and you're casting Radiance, you're casting Void Blasts. So the idea, I wish I knew how to just slow this down on the fly. Okay, let's just watch this again. I'm paying close attention here. So Pet, Mind Blast, Radiance. We already talked about this. This is out of place. You have torment spells. Okay, here's your penance though, but we still have death. So watch what happens after this channel. Void blast, void blast, void blast, then death. That is out of place. So the death should have come way sooner. And what I'm guessing is going to happen, let's see how it plays out. Your second death is not going to come back in time, and you're going to be dropping this torment, and you're going to only be getting 4. Okay, so we're at 4 torments. Yes, so I think that was a good example. You totally forfeited this additional torment, and I would say your Shadow or Death torments are free. You know, the penance involves CDR. You can always get 2 deaths. You just didn't prioritize it. You moved Void Blast above the priority. And I think what it might be, let me just kind of backtrack a little bit here. So the reason these elements are clustered together, our duration on our totems and these 2 cooldowns, whenever I'm in my cooldown, my eyes are kind of fixed here. And I think what might be happening is you're not looking here. I think you might be looking up here, or I'm not too sure. But with your death available and seeing that your pet is out, looking here is kind of what cues you priority. So potentially, whenever you're in your pet and or rift window, this is where you need to be looking to make sure you get 2 penance into the rift and 5 torments. And I'll try and highlight that when we get there too. I think there's a couple of examples when the rift is out as like just a rift window, and you're also missing your second penance. So something to think about, I think you know this, is every penance empowers our rift. If our rift is out and we have a penance available, we don't need to be pressing death. I would even take that one step further. If it's just a rift window, all we need to do is smite penance, radiance. So oftentimes I even drop the death. I'll try and highlight that when we get there. I think there's an example. Yeah, that was a 4 torment window only, and that was because you did not prioritize your torment spells. Let's see, I'm looking at your Mind Blast now. Good. So you're getting that 2-for-1 ratio.
I need to target something
Okay,
first.
let's see how you play boss. I think there's an argument to play it differently than I do, but I pretty much only go for full rotations. And I think that's what you do too, where you just kind of spam smite in between your pets. Okay, let's see how this goes. Fade on open, I like it. 2 dots. You're also dry on atonements here too. Okay, so again, we had the problem where you had 0 atonements. You played your biggest spells possible, your pet and rift, and you had to radiance before your torments. You're also void blasting before your torment. Okay, so I think we're in the position again where since you didn't play death soon enough, we're totally forfeiting a 5th torment here. Yeah, it was only a 4 torment window and you should be getting at least 7. And so I think getting 5 consistently here is a success. But it's when you're aiming for 6 or 7 or 8, putting spells in between before your torments is what's going to hurt you like there. So you have to get penance and death on cooldown before deviating from the rotation. So let's see how you do this. We're tracking the wretch with bigwigs. Oh, and I think this first one you mess up. So I would say that was 90% your fault. You were in a good position, no one was in your way, and you moved, which boinked the shaman. Okay, but let's also see how well you get shields on the people who are targeted.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, we missed the shield, but he did not need it. But we are in our torment window here, and we kind of did the same thing again. We went pet, death, radiance, rift, penance. Pet, death, rift, penance, blast, 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 radiance. And here, I'm just going to pause and I'm going to put it on the screen here, just a little graphic. So the idea is if you're radiancing too soon, it will still cover for the collapse, which is a major component, but your atonements are going to drop off immediately. And you have this steep drop off where you have no more coverage in group. Conversely, when you backload your radiance, when you delay it, it essentially just gives you a longer healing output window. So the idea is after the collapse, you're not done. You can still keep attacking, which kind of plays to our talent book. We want to keep attacking in that moment and just use our atonement spells. So yeah, you need to kind of push it back further.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That was a good shield. But I think between your paladin and your warrior, they're getting covered. Okay, you got a 5 torment window there. That's pretty good. Okay, let's pay really close attention to your next torment window. Okay.
5.
Ooh. So this too, I think I saw it a couple times in here. I'm not going to be able to call it every time. But you don't want to go into your major window with no dot on the enemy. So that's a slight miss. Okay, but we have Pet Played, Death Played, Mind Blast, Penance. So this is, I'm going to try and not beat a dead horse. But I think there's a small misunderstanding with where to place Radiance. And I'm not sure where that comes from, to be honest, but you have to be putting your Torment on cooldown before deviating. And a small note when it comes to this wretch attack, I would position myself and stop moving. So I think what's happening here is, you're selected and you're making yourself a moving target, which is putting others in danger. Okay, we've got 5 torments though. And this is where I think there's an argument for going ahead and playing Mind Blast. I don't do that. It probably puts me at a lower parse. That is just how I do it. Okay, let's see. I want to see Pet Death rips Penance. Pet Rift. Oof. So yeah, it just keeps happening with your torments available and your major spells out. This is it's just out of place. I would at least, for example, Flash Shield the tank first. That would atone the two of you, and that's a much more comfortable place to start your pet window. That way you don't have to radiant so early. Yeah, and I think that was a state of panic. When I'm on this boss, the only thing we really have to worry about is the wretch. I try and always have a plan for what happens if I'm picked or what happens if it's someone else that's picked. And here, let's just replay that. So again, I want to see you kind of move out and then stop moving. And the idea is if you're a stationary target, others can also move away from you. But I think what happened here is you might not have had a plan and you just, it looks like panic. Yeah, you did get the paints up in time, but arguably I would have paints up myself immediately after I noticed I was picked. Like, I think what you did is you moved and then paints up. I would have paints up, then move, and then stop moving. And I think this is a rift too, where you did not get both of your penance. What is this right here? I think this might be a total redundant recar. I'm not sure what that is, but this is that's your dungeon tracker. You don't need the native dungeon tracker is all you need. I don't think you need a second one. Okay, let's see. Let's focus on the Necromancer, Pet, Death, Rift, Radiance. So again, I'm really going to try and stop being a dead horse. I think this happens throughout the entire dungeon, but you're in your major cooldown window with no atonements. The better play would at least Flash Shield tank, renew someone else, and the 3 of you would be atoned. And then you can plan your radiance in between. But with torment spells available, that is the only priority. I think your radiance just too soon. And it's not preventing you from getting 5 torments. So, see if you get your second rift here. Yep, good, good. It's not preventing you from getting 5 torments, which is the assignment, essentially. Here we got 2 penance. It's not preventing you from getting 5, which is the assignment, but it will prevent you from advancing your rotation to 6 torments. And I think you actually probably have the haste to go for 6. It's just you're going to have to kind of adjust your gameplay. Okay, fade for your dotting. Love it. Pet death, rift penance, rift radiance penance. So right here would be the radiance. So for example, this Dark Reprimand was not empowered by Harsh Discipline because you didn't cast a Radiance. So the first Radiance should be empowered by, the first Penance should be empowered by a Radiance pre-combat. The second Dark Reprimand should be empowered by a Radiance mid-Rift. We still got our 5 Torments though. But we kind of got to think about it. You know, if our Rift is empowered by every Bolt of Penance, we really have to leverage that in every way we can to get as many bolts. The Rift, you know, as you saw when you looked at our damage spread, the Rift is massive. It's a huge damage dealer, and we can empower it by those bolts. So we really have to kind of, you know, put ourselves in a position where we're using that currency of Radiance better. And that looked like it was a missed collapse. So something you could have done here that's different, I've been kind of modifying my gameplay. I potentially would have only dotted 1 and then just kind of let our 2 penance coming next to do the rest. It's probably neither here nor there, but that's something I've been changing. Okay, you're sending your Mind Blast while your pet is refreshing. Oh, actually, let me back that up. Why is your pet not ready? Oh, yeah, I remember. So at this point in time, you send your pet. Yeah, you sent pet. The pull has 12% health left overall, or whatever. That is a miss. You never want to send the pet at the end of a pull like this, because on your next pull, as we saw, it's not up. And we really want a pet at the start of every pull, and it kind of throws you off rhythm. So at most here, I would have sent 1 more rift, canceled the rift early, just to get the damage grab, and your pet would be in a lot better of a position. Yeah, so I think a better play would be rift only, cancel the rift early so you would have gotten that value. And then see, the problem here is starting this pull, you're nowhere close to having your pet. So that was a little bit of a misplay playing it so late. You almost never want to do that. So let's see how you handle it. I think what you did was you played your rift while your pet is resetting. Also, that was a Dark Reprimand or a penance that was not empowered by Harsh Discipline. Again, at least, yeah, you should definitely try and empower both of your penance for a rift. So the first penance would come from a Radiance in between combat. The second penance would come from a Radiance during the rift. Actually, let me just play that whole thing again. So I think this might be an area where you miss your penance. So let's count how many penance you get into this rift. There's 1 penance. Yeah. And this is a slight, I think, misunderstanding with the rotation. Your rift being out here is enough to cover what's happening if you cast Void Blast. So without Void Blast, you can't get your second penance. There's CDR involved there. With everyone atoned, you should be Void Blasting, not casting Rapture. And what happens is, since now you're casting these, you're just not going to have enough CDR for your second penance. Oh, actually, you did get it, so I take that back. But it was very close to missing. I would have, regardless, I would have been casting Void Blast there since you had atonements. Okay, so here goes your pet window. Everyone is atoned. Okay, so that is exactly how the rotation should start. if you just replay that by 5 seconds, you went Pet Death Rift Penance. Yes, okay, so this was the first time I saw a rotation that I liked. Pet Death Rift Penance puts all of your torments on a cooldown. You even got some of your Void Blast before the Penance, and that's exactly what you want. And here goes just a half rotation, and something I've been toying with just to get more output. I think in a 12, maybe not the right answer, but I think there's an argument to play these kind of off sync sometimes just for the output. And so what I might do is this frame is where your pet came up. Even though the rift is already out, I might have played the pet anyway because there's enough health left. Yeah, especially when you get higher keys, you know, ooh, that pet might be too late though at this point. In higher keys, when these pulls last long enough, you know, the optimal rotation is having the pet out with the rift, but I think you lose value if you sit on your spells too long, if you just like pigeonhole yourself into that perfect rotation. Okay, so we're kind of in the same boat where you played your pet too late, and he's now not ready, but he's not as far off as the last one. Fading on Rip is a very good habit. No atonements. Yep. So you sent your major window out before atonements. I think that might be coming from Wowhead or Icy Veins. I know I've seen that on the internet somewhere, and please abandon that ideology. That is not the best way to go about discipline. I'd rather it just be a misunderstanding rather than you read that somewhere else. So the proper rotation starts with long atonements. The long atonements cover you to hit your torments and prio your torments. The long atonements even give you coverage to prio the 3 Void Blasts first. And then you backload the Radiance, and it gives you coverage beyond the collapse. Okay, potentially I would not have dotted the lesser guy there. Okay, same thing. You went in dry with atonements, and you had to play a Radiance before your torments. And that Radiance, this is getting picky, but I do want to point it out at least once in here. So let's see. So I think on this one you're radiancing yourself. Oh wait, it was the next one. This I would have shielded him. I think what you're doing is a pre-radiance. This would be better as a shield, a single target heal. But one way or another, I think you're also radiancing the ret. Y'all are not in range. Radiance only spreads by 30 yards. The better radiance would have been on the shaman who's in the middle. And see what happens, you're missed. So it might not happen in this scenario, but this means you're wasting a global to heal yourself now. So you always have to kind of think about, and that's what party nameplates are for, to quickly at a glance kind of judge who's in the middle of your cluster. Another very safe bet in this scenario, Radiance the tank, he's in the middle. Your brethren are butchered. You did get 5 torments though, that's pretty good. Two pins into the rift, and you might have even gotten the collapse. Yes, let's see. Fade on Rip is good. Honestly, I would have only dotted the Necromancer. Same thing where you're playing your Radiance way too early. Okay, we got our 2 penance and our 2 death, 5 torments, pretty good. Second rift, good. So it looks like you're really good at that, and that's something I'm even working on myself. But as soon as that second rift comes up, you kind of want to play it, and that's what you did. Ooh, actually, let's play that back just by a second. Yeah, and I think this was a case where we see the wasted global. Yeah, so let me just zoom in a little bit. That's a little crazy. Okay, so who do you radiance here? Okay, it looks like on this one you're radiancing the ret, who is on the opposite side of this group. And it misses you. You're still atoned, but it's not the same atonement. The better play would, Radiance the tank, Radiance the shaman. You might need to revisit the tooltip, but you can cast Radiance on anyone within 40 yards, but the atonement's only spread by 30, which is quite short. So yeah, what's happening here, watch. Your atonement's going to dwindle, and you have to go and atone yourself. So I would call that a wasted global. We needed our Radiance to do that. So it's not something you have to like worry too much about, but it is something to think about in certain scenarios where we really just need atonement coverage. Okay, we have our pet and our rift in PI. Okay, same thing. You went in dry, playing your Radiance too early. Paints up the tank, not bad. PI is out. There's our second penance, second death, 5 torments, looking good. Barrier might have been unnecessary, but good play nevertheless. Okay, you send that rift. That's actually just, I want to see this again too. So it's a play style I've been trying recently is so like, on open, let's say we get our pet and our rift, and then we can always go for a second rift pretty easily. I've been trying to go for a second pet too. So 2 pets, 2 rifts per pull. Yeah, and in this frame, our pet is available with plenty of health left in party. Even though the rift is already out, I might be playing the pet here too, just to not be sitting on this value. You might do it, I forget. And it's definitely an argument in higher keys. I think a pretty standard rule of thumb is 1 pet, 2 rifts in a pull. But as I'm getting in higher keys with more health in with our enemies, I'm kind of trying to get 2 pets, 2 rifts. Yeah, and for example, we saw where the pet came available. There was a lot of loss there. Food for thought. Okay, pet, death, rift, penance. Out of order. This is also a great dungeon. I'm just going to pause real quick. You don't play Divine Star, and I think that's just personal preference. But this dungeon, more than any of the others this season, is a great dungeon for those AoE spells. So like Halo or Divine Star, this is a great pack to use one of those spells. Okay, we got our 5 torments looking good. I'm going to replay this one. So let's watch your half rotation here, just the rift. Yeah, so it happens sometimes, and it's bound to happen a lot. Well, it's not infrequent, but you never want to play the rift with penance on cooldown, which is exactly what happens. So again, every bolt empowers the rift. We want to get 2 full penance. And if you play your rift with penance not available, you're kind of putting yourself in this position where you're going to forfeit the second one. Okay, so here goes the Mind Blast. We have no penance. There's penance 1. And only 1. So 2 is more than 1. So again, it's bound to happen. It happens to me too all the time. Well, not all the time. But you don't want to play the rift if penance is not up. Pet death, rift penance. Rift radiance penance. Okay, we got our 5 torments. Okay, Okay, let's see. Our rift is coming up. Boom. Perfect. So you play it immediately, which is what you want. There is a lot of value here, and it's a very short cooldown. It is too free to ever sit on it for even a second. But also food for thought, like we were talking about in the last polls. See how long the pet has been up here? I think depending, especially when you're getting like 12 plus range, depending on the poll, there is an argument to play 2 pets also. And that's something I've been toying with myself for the last couple of weeks. I'm going to make a video on it soon. Okay. Fade on Rip. Good practice to be in habit of that.
You dare deny me the sky, and I shall answer in kind.
Also, I would consider it's an option in your KUI if you're interested and can't find it. Hit me up on this. You don't have to have the names. I don't think I did this. I think you did it. The names being colored, I think, makes it hard to read. You can have the names just be all white, and I think that might be a little bit better, unless you like that. Okay, so we have our rift. Boom, there it goes. So this is an example. You sent the rift. Let's just see how it goes. There's our second penance. Love it. I think we had some cases before. I'll try and point it out again. But if it's just a half window, just the rift, I almost don't play death. There is room to play it once. So mainly I prio smiting, I prio penancing, I prio 1 radiance. And then you usually have time for like 1 more spell. But when you think about it, you know, if you crunch the numbers, your Void Blast, which you have access to, is going to hit harder than the death. And at this point in time, the death isn't tormenting, it's just the rift. So this has less value than a Void Blast. Yeah, so a Void Blast, I would rather you do 1 more of these than a death. The only time I might play a death is if I need healing and someone's in execute. At a point like this where you're not in execute range, I probably wouldn't play that at all, period. It only has value when the pet's out, and I think you know that. Or if there's an execute range. This is another argument where I think we could go for 2 pets. Okay, boom. And we're going into boss. I am going to stop for the moment. I have to go get my haircut. But we will splice this in and continue in a little bit. All right, here we go. So we're actually 1 day later, but that's okay. Let's see how you do here. So tracking the Land of the Dead, that is the only one I track also. If anything, I would say you potentially jumped the gun a little bit with your cooldowns. Nothing bad happened, but... Oh, and I think that's the first time I saw that too. Definitely take a macro for @player Angelic Feather. I think it's almost like how it's intended to be used. And then in this phase, I like to Rapture. Like I might use a Radiance into Rapture. Okay, and then the timing here is a little bit better. Radiance, Radiance, Radiance. Yep, you always want to Radiance before that second penance. And the reason is, let me actually just replay that a little bit. Oh, where'd I go? And you always want to Radiance before the second penance, and that is because... Okay, so here's your Radiance. Think about it. So... At this point, your rift has already collapsed. These extra bolts that you're essentially buying are going to miss the rift. So you really want to use the Radiance during the rift so that these extra bolts empower the rift. And so, yes, you do need atonement coverage, but the placement could have been a little bit better if you were giving these extra penance bolts to the rift. You're really good at sending your second rift, though. That's good. And I do believe on that one, let me just replay that half rotation. So, okay, yeah, we talked about it a moment ago. But so notice how you're about to send your Mind Blast. Your penance is on cooldown. You never want to do that to the best of your ability. And I think what happens here is now you only get one penance for the rift. Let's see. Okay, here's penance 1. So that was an example where you could have fit the second penance, even though it wasn't like the perfect rotation, but you were playing too many Void Blasts and your Shadow or Death. So in a case like this where the pet's not out, death doesn't mean nearly as much. More smites, more penance. So I think if you had like just maybe taken that death out of the rotation and weaved in one more smite, which does affect the cooldown of penance, you would have been able to fit it. But also arguably, no, you just messed up. So don't start the rift without the penance, and in the rift, death doesn't mean nearly as much. So favor smite, favor penance, favor radiance. Here, I'm going to just play that one more time actually. So I'm not even sure you got your radiance in here. Okay, so here comes your Mind Blast. So again, remember, anytime the rift is out, you want to radiance. And that doesn't matter if it's the rift by itself or the rift and the pet. Anytime the rift is out, you want to radiance. Okay, so here goes your rift. There's penance 1. Blast, blast, death, blast, blast. So, just gonna pause right. So there is room for one more spell generally. So fitting in one death, I think is okay. And the only time I would reach for a death is if I'm in execute, so I'm not faulting you there. But in a half window, we don't have enough time for 2 executes. So in a case like this, you missed the radiance and you missed the second penance. So at most, I would have played maybe 1 death just for the grab. But yeah, definitely you don't have enough time for 2, and you did miss your second penance, which is way more valuable than even 2 Shadow or Deaths. Let's send the... Ooh. I was going to say I would send the Rift here, but you sent the Pet and Rift. So if I had to guess, that was just a mistake. But you have done it, at least I think once or twice before now, because it doesn't look like it's going to hurt you too bad. But you never want to be ending combat with your pet not ready. But I think due to this FAP, you're actually probably okay here. Okay, and then I kind of forget how you do it up here. So let's see how it goes. Let's find our focus target early. Okay, you have no atonements in party. So let me just try and make a point of this, and I know I've said it almost every poll, and I think you understand it now even from when we talked in Discord. But yeah, you want to go into a poll like this with atonements out. This scares me. With everyone gray, with no atonements, the group is in a lot of danger right now. And then, so for example, I'm going to pause. Okay, so here goes your pet. So your pet being out, it has like a melee mechanic where it just kind of like constantly fires. That is healing. It returns as atonement. And the problem is no one's atoned. And then also I think you reach for... Yeah, you also sent the Mind Blast. So I would also... Yeah, okay, so you're sending the Mind Blast here too with no atonements. The upfront damage of Mind Blast is not to be, forgotten. And then also... The healing from the rift is very substantial, and it's falling on nobody. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I would say your rotation's a little bit out of sequence, because your pet is already doing its job, but you have no atonements to take the healing. And then same with the rift. So you want at least 3 atonements out before you start your rotation. Let's see how your torments do, though. Okay, you got 5 torments, looking good. Also consider, so I like an at player for feathers, so that was another example, but also consider at cursor for barrier. But one thing I would have done there, I think you're actually pretty good at it, is your defensives. As soon as I saw that disease pop off, I would have mashed my defensives. And I think in a pull like that, where it's expected to be kind of chaotic and dangerous, I might have played my defensives preemptively, like even before there was damage. I think you're pretty good at those. When I did the skim of your spells, I did see these firing off, and I know you're playing your Fade quite a bit too, but Desperate Prayer might have saved your life there, and if you had lived, this might not have happened to the pole. Definitely Fade here. Be a great time to Fade. Okay, so we're doing a half rotation here. Just the Rift. Okay, use Desperate Prayer there. Were you selected with something? I think you was. Yeah, you're selected with this. Okay. Actually, it looked like the attack was interrupted. That might have been a little bit of a wasted Desperate Prayer, but that's okay. Again, if you're doing just a half rotation, yeah. If you're doing just the Rift, I know I've said it before. Let me just pause real quick. Death means a lot less when it's not tormenting from our pet. So if just the Mind Blast and the Rift is out, I don't prioritize these Shadow Word deaths. Potentially one much higher prio is getting a Radiance out to empower the penance, and getting 2 penance and as many Void Blasts as possible. In that Rift, you only got 1 penance again. Let's see how you do here. You went into your window a little bit dry on atonements. Radiance was out of place again, but I think you got that by now. Okay, we have 5 torments. Let's see, we just got our Mind Blast. Good, good. Sent that very quick. Okay. Okay, let me just replay that a little bit. So, when it comes to the Rift, it can almost heal anything on its own, if you trust your atonements. So our atonements, if you ever look at a spread at the end of a dungeon, are about 70% of our healing. It's massive. It is a lot more than Raptures, for example. So what happens here is you send your Rift out and you start Rapturing. So what I would have rather have liked to have seen is send the Mind Blast out, Radiance the Shaman. That way your atonements will hit 5 of 5, and then continue to Void Blast, favoring that second penance. Okay, so let's see. You Radiance... Oh yeah, and then another thing, I forget if we've talked about it, but Radiance before Rapture is usually better. I don't like this Rapture at all, though, to be honest. But let's see. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so it looks like you're giving Radiance to the Paladin, who's actually the furthest from you. And watch what happens. You're missed. So 4 of 5 with your Radiance is not great, especially in a pull like this where we have a cooldown out. We need to be able to freely attack. And the only way we can do that is if everyone's atoned. So the better Radiance target would have been the Shaman. And I would not... Okay, we did get our second penance though. The second penance almost missed though because we were giving too many globals to shields. If the rift is out, you should be focusing more on the rift, at least in that scenario. Let's see here. We have a rift coming up. There it goes. Yeah, you're really good at that. And it's something I'm even working on myself personally. So in a case like that, again, I would not have worried about the Shadow or Deaths. I would have focused more on getting that second penance into the rift. It was dying, but I think there was enough time to get the second penance if you had just been smiting. Yeah, so again, food for thought. When the rift is out, just smite, just penance, just radiance. No deaths. Death is only for the pet. Oh wow, that shaman's fucked. Oh, that was a really good bop. Let's see. I didn't see how that pull started, but I'm not going to go back. I think your pet was on cooldown. Alright, let me just go back. I think your pet was on cooldown. Or no, you sent it here. Okay, well, never mind. Let me just go to the next pull. Okay, so we have a pet and a rift. We found our target. Same thing. You went into your window with 0 atonements, and you're playing your Radiance a little too early. Actually, in that case, so I don't ever do it that way, so I'm not too familiar with like the timings of it. But I think actually when you play your Radiance too soon, yeah. Okay, so I'm glad I saw this. And this is a big problem with playing your Radiance too soon. And I know I am beating a dead horse at this point, but I'm watching, so watching my atonements drop. So my atonements drop in this frame right here. And then now also look at my rift. It's collapsing in 1 second. I guess this has been happening all along and I'm just now seeing it. When you play your Radiance too soon, you're kind of foregoing the component of the collapse. So the rift has ticking healing from atonement, but the collapse is also healing from atonement. And it's a major component of our spec right now. And the Radiance is supposed to cover everybody for the collapse. And when you are playing your Radiance out of order and too early like that, we're in this situation where you have no atonements in party because it was too early, and no one is taking the healing from the collapse. Yep, and there was the collapse on 0 atonements. I'm going to watch that next time too. Okay. Ooh, ouch. Let's see if we get our second penance. Ooh. Okay. So you did get your second penance. It might have missed a bolt or two, but your penance was available sooner than you played it. So whenever you have a cooldown out, I'm looking again right here in this one area. And if my penance is available and my rift is at 2 seconds remaining, you're almost out of time. So I think you sat on your penance for 1 too many casts. You almost missed it. Let's see, another Mind Blast. Ooh, another pet. Pet and Mind Blast. Okay, 5 torments. We almost got 6. Then all I would do right here is smite and penance. You could do a rift too. Mainly trying to reset the pet for next pull. And we're good. I've not been seeing your PI usage. Okay, and then these pulls, our melee, are going to take more damage. So we really need to have Okay, so let's pay attention to when the atonements dwindle and the collapse. That time your collapse worked for the atonements, but you also didn't get an optimal rift. So I think you missed your 3 void blasts. Let me just replay that. Yeah, you didn't get all your proper extension. Let's just see how it goes.
2, 1.
Okay. 1 blast, 2 blast. Oh, you did get 3. Okay.
3,
Well, that time everyone was
1.
atoned. So I don't know. You still don't want to put your radiance that soon.
3,
Okay, that was a good radiance because their rift is still active. Good warrior.
3, 2, 1.
So generally, I would say you don't want to play a pet too late there, but in this case, it's fine. Because on boss pull, all we want to play is the rift. So let's see if you get a rift out. Good job.
5, 4, 3,
Kind of also need to think about getting into sneaking over towards position. Oh, that player feather would be helpful. So I think in that case, let me see that play again. It is a little tricky, and I'm not going to fault you for it, but I think, yeah, let's see here. So what I'm looking at is your penance. So even though you're selected, your rift is out, and you really want to get that second penance. So you have penance available. This is a spell you can press while moving. I would have rather you like been kind of closer to position, maybe where the shaman is. That way you didn't have to use a global to feather, and you could have gotten the second penance while you're moving. Because right now, you foregoed that second penance. Okay, I would be giving atonements to party, regular atonements.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That was a good radiance. Five torments, good. And here we make kind of a unique mistake. You played your rift without a dot active, and then you worked your dot into your rotation. That is a major loss over a blast. Okay, long atonements do really good here. So would a barrier.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, and in that case, at least in this case, it's the same problem, but I want to kind of, this is a different angle. So your preferred rotation ends up being Pet Death, Radiance, Rift Penance. My encouragement is Pet Death, Rift Penance, Smite, 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 Radiance. So in this case, your rotation is still out of order, but everyone's atoned already. So you're casting Radiance when everyone's atoned. I would call this over-atoning when we do have a Torment spell here. So you, the reason, everyone has turned blue like this, and the reason we have this positioned here, you might not be using these UI elements fully yet. So in a case like this, when I see everyone's atoned, what that should be telling you is I'm free to attack. And this is a much better spell to play in this moment than a Radiance again too early. That looked like it was a random PI.
5,
Okay, 7 torments. Good, good, good.
2, 1.
You're about to lose your raptures. So it's a tricky play there. Sometimes I think it's okay to like not play all of your raptures, but you really want to. They're good spells. Another really good place for a barrier.
3, 2, 2, 1, 1.
Let's see how you do on a last boss. So I'm only tracking one spell here, and it's the Icebound Aegis. Okay, that's what you got. And we have to play something there every time. Raptures before is a good idea. A pet and a rift is a good idea. Or just a rift is a good idea. Okay, good. You're smiting to get your pet back. Here we go.
None can escape the storm.
For example, if you had Divine Star, that's something you could play while you're moving. Okay, we got 5 torments. Love it. I think the paladins are going to come in real handy here.
None can escape the storm.
So that Rapture, I would say, was wasted. Because there's not... the ticking damage portion of the Aegis was over. A better play... So I think... Let me see here.
None can escape the storm.
Yeah, so you started the Rapture after the ticking was over. And it could have just been one of those, oh, whoops, moments, you know. But in that case, like if you were a little bit late to the Rapture, the better play would be to hold the remainder. Like you can waste one and that's fine. But I think what you do here is you go and you spend all of them. And the ticking damage is over. A better play, yeah, would be just to hold them for the next 10 seconds. And they'll line up better here. Let's see if they last long enough. They might, actually. No, that shield wasted. That shield wasted. That shield wasted. So the nice thing with Rapture is you can start the cooldown, hold the shields literally for 30 seconds and they themselves last 15. So you can play one by mistake and then kind of just bank the rest and delay them for the next attack.
None can escape the storm.
Looks like another random PI. I think I talked about it earlier, but again, I think as long as you're playing PI like full send, that's a fine place to start. But the more optimal approach to PI is when it overlaps with your team's offensives. And by and large, every class has one. So with the warrior, it would be this one. What is that called? Recklessness or Avatar or something. The Ret Paladin, it would be Wake of Ashes. You're not tracking it. So to track their offensives is kind of what we want to use Omni CD for. And I can send you my profile if you want it. Okay, here comes the next Aegis. You have your Rift active. That is good. I'd play a Radiance before the dance. Ooh. Okay.
None can escape the storm.
Let me actually back that one up a little bit. So I said good, and the reason I want to back this up is because maybe it wasn't. So here goes your Mind Blast. Your Aegis is 8 seconds away. Your Rift is only 11 seconds. So you're not really going to get much value. So we really want to time every spell with this Aegis, not only for the healing, but we have to break the Aegis. So let's see here. I don't think it bites you in the butt here, but it will in higher keys. And I'm re-recording this section. I wanted to point out, you just cast your pet. I think it was an accidental cast. One way or another, I don't think you notice, and then you don't play any of your torment spells. So you're smiting here with our torments active, and this pet goes to full waste only with one torment. Okay, let's see. Aegis is upon us. Okay, this time you missed the Rift. I think maybe you're trying to set up for a combo, which is fine. Okay, Aegis in 5. I think you're just buying time here. Okay, Pet Death, Rift Penance.
None can escape the storm.
Okay, and 5 torments. Good. Oh no, you lost. I actually didn't notice that the first time through. Okay, your rift is out. Aegis is about to happen. So that, not a good rapture. Objectively bad. When the rift is out, you have to get those 2 penance. And I think because of all of these globals, now you don't. Moreover, the rift is enough to cover this attack. I think you also forfeited all of the extensions. So you didn't get any Void Blast here. And I'm re-recording this section too. Let's watch your next pet. So we really have to pay attention to that area on our screen for those UI elements, our totem durations and torment cooldowns. Okay. So watching the pet, here it goes. Pet death, rift, radiance penance. So actually, yeah, this is where it falls off. So you got 1 penance there, 2 deaths from execute. Here's your next penance now available, and you totally miss it. So that was a 4 torment window. There's quite a bit of loss. Okay, radiance before the rift. That's okay. Now let's see if we get a radiance in the rift. Ooh. Okay. So in that one, it might not be something that you are fully locked in on when it comes to a mechanic. I think it's just from the talent called Collapsing Void, but every penance we cast empowers the rift. And in this case, here comes the rift, Mind Blast. You play your 1 penance, and you're doing the right thing. Oh no, you're actually playing too many deaths again. But you blast, blast, blast. Here's the penance. Penance is up. Penance is up. So the penance was up for, I think you cast like Void Blast 3 times while the penance was up. We really need to make sure we get that second penance into the rift. But I think you're really getting a hang of discipline. I think even since we had that quick little follow-up lesson, I see a lot of improvement. I think the biggest area for you is just really solidifying the priorities when it comes to our rotation. So start trying to aim for 6 torments, and you have got to play your torments before Radiance. So lead in with regular atonements. That gives you the freedom to hit your torment spells. And then play a Radiance after the 3 Void Blasts. And then when it comes to the half rotation, this is the easier one. Kind of let go of death and just worry about Radiance, Penance, and Smites. But yep, thanks for the lesson. I think you're doing it pretty good. And yeah, until next time, Disc out.